Welcome back to the program. I'm Joe Mahan.
I'm Tyeler Durand.
We're going to be talking about Richard Sherman, and I'll tell you a little bit about his background. 5th round selection in 2011. He led the league in interceptions in 2013. And that was the year they won the Super Bowl. The Seahawks 43-8 over the Broncos. Of course, the Legion of Boom. This was something interesting I found out about them. That defense went 4 straight years, #1 scoring defense. It hadn't been done since the 1950s Browns. So now let's talk about the game that kind of made his name, Richard Sherman, the Michael Crabtree game.
It's a game I remember fondly. The 49ers are coming off a Super Bowl loss to the Ravens, and they're in the NFC Championship game again. The Seahawks are up. The 49ers are driving. They still have pretty much a good amount of time on the clock, maybe 2 or 3 minutes left, whatever the time might have been. And they're getting into good range. It looks like, wow, they really might go down and score. Kaepernick takes a shot to the back right corner of the end zone to Michael Crabtree, who he was a solid receiver, you know, but he was never, at that point, that was when he was in his prime before he got injured, and he was really, you know, just an average guy after that. But he, Sherman tipped the ball away right into the linebacker's hand. I'm trying to think of the linebacker's
I think
name.
It was the linebacker who was the MVP of the Super Bowl 2 weeks later.
KJ Wright, maybe?
Malcolm Smith?
Malcolm Smith, that's who it is. Yeah, who ended up coming to the Niners as well. Malcolm Smith. That's right. And I was like, I know it's not Wagner, but great recovery and play by Sherman to tip the ball away from Crabtree. Crabtree was never really in a great position to win that battle, especially against a guy in Sherman, who's 6'3", and at the time was probably the best cornerback in the league. And you know, the rest is history, right? The Seahawks go on to win the game. After the game, Sherman went to go shake Crabtree's. He went to go shake Crabtree's hand. Shoved his hand away, and then when the interview happened, if Aaron Andrews, as you said, says, "You don't try a sorry receiver like Crabtree on me. I'm the best in the game. Take my name out your mouth, or I'll make you shut it." Essentially, and it was this huge thing that really kind of everyone, like, if you were into football, you knew the Seahawks because they were just incredible on defense those couple of years, but it was the game that really kind of skyrocketed Richard Sherman to being not only one of the best, but one of the most recognized in the game. Right? It was like, oh wait, this dude's for real, and he's got a swagger about him that, for me personally, I love to see in certain players. There's certain positions where you really want to see a swagger, and Sherman certainly had that and more. But the whole defense did, you know. That's why they were so good for, you know, like you said, 4 or 5 years. And
then 2 weeks later they back it up, all that talk, by winning the Super Bowl 43-8.
Against the Broncos, who led by Peyton Manning, were one of the best offenses we've seen in the last 10 years, maybe, you know, history, right? You know, Peyton broke Tom's record or tied it for most passing touchdowns in a season. You know, they had 3 guys over 1,000 yards receiving. They were unstoppable all season long until they got to the Super Bowl, and you knew it was going to be bad news when the center snapped the ball over Peyton Manning's head the first play of the game. And it was all downhill from there. It was all Seahawks. They rolled. They took all the momentum they had throughout the year into that game, and there's not too many times where Super Bowls are blowouts, but that a blowout's almost an understatement. They scored 8 points. It was one of the best offenses we've seen, you know, and so that was really what was, you know, one of the best defenses.
It was
led by Sherman, but obviously there's a lot of other guys there. Bobby Wagner, who's still there, still one of the best linebackers in the league, but you know, one of the leaders was Sherman, and that was one of the best defenses we've ever seen. You know, they talked about it in the same breath as the '85 Bears, as the 2000 Ravens, and some of those teams that, you know, you really never forget. Right?
Yeah, and the other one I want to mention is the 2003 Bucks, who won the Super Bowl.
Another great one,
With 3 Hall of Famers on that team: Warren Sapp, Lynch, and Brooks. So. And
That's
the thing is, which I didn't realize, you know, doing some research for this show, Browner was on that Seahawks team that won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He was on the Patriots the next year.
Yep.
So now let's switch to that play where Richard Sherman's kind of involved with Browner, the Malcolm Butler game. The Seahawks are going for back-to-back. They're on the 1 yard line.
I was one salty 49ers fan. Oh, yeah. I mean, look, as a 49ers fan, obviously there's not much better than the 49ers winning the Super Bowl, but a close second is, one of my favorite players in Tom Brady winning, but the Seahawks losing, right?
Yeah.
They had just taken the Super Bowl from the 49ers the year before, then they get back, and it's like really, like, they've got this young quarterback, this crazy good defense, and here they are in the Super Bowl again. And it looked like they're going to win. They have, the Patriots have something about them in the Super Bowl where other wide receivers just make these otherworldly plays, right? Obviously we talk about the helmet catch, DeMario Manningham's sideline catch, and then it happens again with Jermaine Kearse, I think it was, where he kicks it in the air and pulls it in, and it's like, is this really happening? So as a 49ers fan and a not necessarily a Patriots fan, but a Tom Brady fan, I'm like, this can't be really happening. I'm rooting for the Seahawks to lose more than anything. And there they go, 1 yard line. Donta Hightower makes this incredible tackle to stop Lynch. And instead of going back to them, they try to throw it. Malcolm Butler makes one of the best Super Bowl plays we've ever seen, and we ever probably will see. It always reminds me of the play in the Titans and Rams Super Bowl. When he stopped. It was a little different, but like, you're right there. You're right there, about to win the game, and then 2 inches. That's it. That's it. Football's a game of inches. And Malcolm Butler made a name for himself. He sealed another victory for Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. And what an incredible performance by him in that game. Just one of, like we've talked about, it's one of the best defenses we've ever seen in those Seahawks teams. And he carved them up. He had something like 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. They were down by 2 touchdowns in that game twice. And they came back both times. And it was just some incredible performance. And
like on the last show we did, we were talking about Richard Sherman in that game, where I back up Richard Sherman calling out Pete Carroll, what are you doing? Because they were going for back-to-back. And that defense would have been ranked if they would have won that, well, I think with the 85 Bears.
So I think they're probably in the conversation with the 85 Bears anyway. Obviously, I wasn't alive during that time to really say from my own eyes what I think, but just based on everything I know, I think they're in the conversation, but I think this would have topped them, you know? But obviously, Tom is Tom, and he did what he did, and obviously, Butler saved it, but Pete Carroll blew it. Pete Carroll blew it probably more than Butler saved it. And that was kind of the start of the decline for the Seahawks. That they've been playoff teams every year, but their defense started to fall apart. They weren't the Legion of Boom anymore. They started to lose a lot of their players because they had to pay Russell Wilson. Marshawn Lynch was only getting older, and it really was, I love it. It was the start of the decline of the Seahawks, and they're still a team that hangs around every year, but they haven't been back since. They haven't even really sniffed it since. And, so I'm glad Pete Carroll blew it for many reasons, but it really was the start of the decline because, Pete Carroll's this loosey-goosey guy, right? We've seen it in New England and in Seattle. He's like, yeah, you guys go be you. Chewing his gum. You guys go be you. And just a lot of the guys, I think, just lost a lot of respect for him. Like, that type of coaching works when it works, but then when you blow a game like that, it's kind of like, all right, well, now what?
Worst call in Super Bowl history. Later on, we'll be talking about your 49ers, and we're going to talk about maybe another kind of bad sequence of calling. But now, let's talk about Richard Sherman when he goes to your team, the 49ers. They go to the Super Bowl, the Jimmy G Super Bowl. You guys are up 20-10. The finals 31-20. What happened with giving up 3 straight touchdowns in 5 minutes?
I mean, look, Patrick Mahomes is obviously a superstar and otherworldly quarterback, but
it's a nightmare.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, wow, like you got 7 minutes left. 8 minutes left, you pick off Pat Mahomes, you think you got
Yep.
the game, and then all of a sudden they rip off 3 straight.
Yep.
And part of that's on Sherman, right?
Yeah.
He was awesome. He was awesome that season. He made, I think, second team All-Pro, Pro
Yep.
Bowl. He was awesome all year long. Even in the playoffs, he had an interception against Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. He had an interception the next week
Yup.
against Aaron Rodgers.
Yup.
And then they get to the Super Bowl, and he played a pretty solid game for the
Right.
most part up until that last drive. There's about
When-
3.5, 4 minutes
Yeah, who
left.
burned him?
Sammy Watkins.
Sammy Watkins.
38 yards,
Yep.
40 yards.
Right.
Up to like the 15 or whatever it was, and then
Yep.
a play or a couple plays later, he whiffed on a tackle to Damian Williams, and
Oh.
that's when they took the lead. It was 20-17,
Yep.
and then he gave up 2 plays in the matter of 5 or 6 different plays, and I was recently watching that play, the Sammy Watkins one in particular. He looked tired and slow, right? He was awesome all year long, but he had recovered from that Achilles injury just a couple years prior. He was 31 or so at the time.
Yep.
He looked tired.
Yeah.
He looked slow, and Sammy Watkins was this young guy,
Right.
early first round pick who never lived up to that, but
Right. He was.
that Chiefs team, they still are, but they were so fast.
Yeah.
Obviously we think of Tyreek Hill and the running backs, but Sammy Watkins is a burner too.
Oh yeah.
And he
Yeah,
made it known on that play.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins was a track star. He
Yeah.
was number 10 pick in the draft. And Crabtree was number 10. He was a high pick.
Was he 10? I
Yeah,
think.
he was a high pick. He played for that Mike Leach.
Yeah,
I
he
think
played for Texas Tech.
Yeah.
And he was an awesome college player.
yeah.
And I just don't think he really had an offense or a quarterback
Right.
that really.
That fit him.
I don't know if it wasn't like a high-powered passing offense with Alex Smith.
Yep.
They had
Oh,
Frank
no.
Gore,
No.
and they loved to run the football, especially when Harbaugh came. And he had a couple solid years, but eventually, I think his was an Achilles too. He ruptured his Achilles,
Yep.
and he was never really the same. He had one solid year after that. He ended up going to the Raiders, and he flamed out. But yeah.
So we're going to wrap this up about Richard Sherman. So certainly his finest hour was that Super Bowl victory, 43-8. And I back him up 110% about how he was frustrated, to say the least, with Pete Carroll, because they had back-to-back right there. Wasn't guaranteed, but you were on the 1-yard line.
Oh yeah.
So-
When you're on the 1-yard line with only a minute left,
Right.
it's not too much else to guarantee, especially when I think the pick happened on 2nd down.
Yep.
It's not like it was 4th down and they're going for one more play.
Right, exactly. So that's going to wrap it up with Richard Sherman. Now we're going to switch and talk about your 49ers.
Yeah.
49ers, 5-2 Super Bowl record. So Joe Montana goes 4-0.
Yep.
Steve Young wins the ring. They're 5-0. So they're going for Jordan territory.
Yeah,
That
and then they
Super
lose
Bowl-
the 2 that I've seen.
Right, so that's
they
why
won the year after I was born in '94, but of course the 2 that I've seen are the
Right,
2
so
losses.
let's talk about that one. The one with Harbaugh, the Harbaugh brothers.
Yeah.
And let's cut
That was
right
so
to,
cool.
Let's cut right to the chase. What happened at that 5-yard line? 3 straight passes to Michael Crabtree.
Which is weird because they were a running team, like we just talked about. Harbaugh loved to run the ball. That's what they were a hard-nosed defensive team. I mean, with Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, Justin Smith, I think Alden Smith, that was the year he really was an incredible.
Right, he was, yeah.
Dante Whitner. They had so many pieces. What the other safety is escaping me, but he was another hard hitter. They had so many pieces everywhere in defense, and then they ran the ball down everybody's throat.
Yeah, 'cause
and then they throw it, 3 straight times, and it's like it was weird, especially when you have Kaepernick, who is an incredible athlete. Just a couple games before that, he broke the NFL record for rushing yards in a game by a quarterback with 180
Right.
or 181 or whatever, whatever the number was. But
I mean,
a lot of people like to say Crabtree was held, and maybe he was. In my opinion, I don't think it was one of those holds that really needed to be called. If you call it, great. It's it could go either way. It was a ticky-tacky call that they call a lot in the league.
Yeah.
But I think with the Super Bowl on the line, it wasn't like an egregious call where it's like we got to call that. It's obviously a hold. It was one of those ticky-tack calls. I would have loved to see them call it, obviously, but I don't think it necessarily warranted it. But that's what happened. He tries to go for the fade. Again, same thing. Back right corner of the end zone fade to Crabtree.
Ridiculous.
The next year we saw what happened on that same play. A different spot on the field where it came from, but this was more of a slant fade. The other one was a deep fade, but it was
you
tough
guys
loss,
had Randy
man. Especially
Moss
because the way they came back.
Right.
You know, they were down big,
Yep.
and then the lights went out, and they really came back and stormed back. And the special teams in that game was a big reason they lost because Jacoby Jones, who was lightning quick, returned a touchdown in that game to open up the second half, I think it was, and it was just, it was brutal. It was brutal to see that happen, and they did the best they could to storm back. I mean, it looked like they were getting blown out, and they really pulled it together, and you know.
No, it was a good game.
2 yards, 5 yards away.
Right, because a couple times Baltimore went down and had to settle for a field goal, which helped you guys. And then you guys came back. It was back and forth, but you're at the 5-yard line. Now, Randy Moss, I'm assuming he was double covered on the other side.
Yeah, and he was older. At that point in his career, he wasn't really like a great threat, you know. But either way.
But still, Randy, I mean, wouldn't you have rather gone to him 3 times?
I believe they had Brandon Lloyd on the team that year too. And he was a really solid receiver for them, but again, older at that point. You know, so it was surprising that they passed it there. They had Vernon Davis, who was an outstanding tight end for so many years. But, you know, the thing that blows me away more than anything during that run was Joe Flacco.
Yep.
You know, he had a couple solid years. You know, this was his fifth year in the league. He had a couple solid years.
Yep.
And in that playoffs, they were in the wild card round. They beat the Broncos, they beat the Patriots, and I forget the other team that they had to beat to get there. Yep. But he threw 11 passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions in those 4 games.
And he was a free agent next year, so he got paid.
And he got paid handsomely and never did anything else after that. But, I mean, he was awesome. You know, and I hate to say that, but he was awesome in that game, awesome in that playoff run. You know, he's one of those guys where you look back on, you know, in 20 years, and you're going to be like, yeah, Joe Flacco was never really a great quarterback, but that was one heck of a run.
He had a run.
You know, just it was almost like Eli Manning. Once you get into the playoffs, you know he's gonna play, but outside of that, he never really did anything special. And you know, they had Torrey Smith, who was a speedy guy. They had Anquan Bolden. I loved Anquan Bolden. Always loved that guy. He's a tough-nosed player. You know, he's not necessarily a flashy guy like Randy Moss or something like that, but he knew where the chains were. He knew how to pick up first downs. And although he was never the fastest guy, he knew how to beat you and how to get open. Even if that open was only by this much to make the catch, he was tough. Tough.
Didn't he help? He helped Arizona get to that Super Bowl, Anquan Bolden, on that year.
Yeah, a few years earlier.
Good.
He was awesome in Arizona. I mean, I believe he has the most receiving yards for a rookie in a single game with 205, and I believe it was his first career game, something along those lines. It was crazy. But he ended up coming over to the 49ers, and then and he was awesome there. He was, he was like the last good receiver we've really had, to be honest. They've had a string of bad luck, the 49ers at receiver the past, 5, 6, 15 years.
Wow.
And which is funny because they had so many good so many good receivers. Obviously Jerry Rice speaks for himself, but Taylor and Dwight Clark and Terrell Owens and all these different guys, and then just the luck that they've had with these just awful receivers. And now they have a couple guys. I hope Debo can stay healthy, but he's been banged up quite a bit in his few years in. And Brendan Ayuk looks legit, so I'm really excited to see him. But back to Anquan Bolden. He ended up with us. He was awesome. And then a couple years later, Torrey Smith ends up with us. So it was just so funny how the 2 wide receivers who killed us in that Super Bowl end up coming on over and playing with us. And tough Super Bowl loss. Super Bowl loss.
So you guys you were 5-0 in the Super Bowl heading into that one. You lose to Baltimore, so now you're 5-1. You're trying to get to Jordan territory again. And you guys face Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this one, and I never really thought we had much of a chance going in. Going into that year, I was like, if we make the playoffs, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And they ended up one of the best teams in the league. I mean, they were they went into the Superdome that year against Drew Brees and won.
Yep.
You know, they had so many games where they went into Seattle at the end of the year. Was it in Seattle or at home? I can't quite remember. But either way, it was the last game of the season, and Dre Greenlaw, number 57, pops the tight end with this, this much room on the last play of the game, or fourth down. 49ers ended up going to win it, to go into home field advantage, and then they flew through the playoffs. I never expected them to be there, so I was just happy to go along for the ride. You know, and obviously once you get there, you always have a chance, but I was like, against this Pat Mahomes team, you know, he 55 touchdowns that year, he broke the record. You know, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Damian Williams, you know, they had such a great cast of characters. Their defense wasn't great, but the second half of the year and into the playoffs, they picked it up when it mattered.
Yeah.
You know, Tyrann Mathieu was a guy that scared the heck out of me.
Good. Yeah.
And he was awesome in that game. If I remember correctly, he had a pick.
Yeah.
You know, he was awesome in that game, and they had just a couple of defensive guys on the defensive line who were awesome, and they made plays when it mattered, a couple of pass deflections in the game, and you know, they started to roll in that game. They're up 20-10, and I'm like, wow, like these guys really have a shot. And then all of a sudden in the second half, the Chiefs defense stepped up. The 49ers offense just and it was weird because they were such a running team. They literally threw the ball 6 or 8 times in the game prior, in the championship game, and then the split for the year was like 55% run plays, 45% pass plays. And in the Super Bowl, it was like 58-42 the other way. So it's like you get to the Super Bowl on your run game with Raheem Mostert, who broke the 49ers rushing record in a playoff game with over 200 yards. You know, and then all of a sudden, Tevin Coleman was really good that year. And you know, the offensive line, all of it, right? They had the whole picture, especially for the run game. And you go away from it. Now, with that said, I thought Jimmy was the better quarterback for about 2.5 quarters.
He was.
And a huge play in that game was George Kittle.
Yep.
Right before the first half ended, he gets his huge gain down the sideline, and it's one of those things that's ticky-tacky call.
Yeah.
You know, they called him for a pass interference, which
that was a controversial call.
I don't think it. You know, again, I tried to be as unbiased as possible. You know, I said earlier the Crabtree one in the Super Bowl prior probably shouldn't have been a hold, but and it wasn't. This one I don't think should have been an offensive pass interference. I get it. You know, there's certain ticky-tack calls that you make, but it was such a huge call. They really had a chance to go up big before halftime, and it ended up totally going the other way. Such a huge call. A huge call.
And a lot of 49er fans, they put that game on Jimmy G because he didn't hit that long pass to Sanders.
Yeah, and you know, not only that play to Sanders, but it was right around that same time. I don't know if it was, you know, a couple plays later or you know, the drive earlier. I forget exactly when it was in the game. Try to block it out. But Kittle was open for a first down underneath, and he was wide open, and he. You know, when Kittle gets the ball in his hand, he's as explosive as anybody. Yeah. And Jimmy didn't even look his way, which is it was awful because the pass ended up deflected going the other way when, you know, it could have been a wide open gain for George Kittle to run freely down the middle of the field for a huge gain. And you know, that's when they were. I think it was 20-17 at that point. And you know what ends up happening is they go the other way and they score to take the lead. You know, you let Pat Mahomes get one touchdown and there's still time, and you're only down now by 3 instead of 10.
Yep.
Anything can happen at that point. Yep. And then once you go at 24, you know, you make one stop. The game was pretty much over. The 49ers still technically had a chance. They technically had time, but then Damian Williams broke that touchdown. You know, huge play up the sideline, and they obviously couldn't pull anything together from there. But tough loss, man, because I didn't give them much of a shot, but they really, really played hard for most of the game. And then
5.5 minutes.
There's one call on Kittle that gets called. There's another call, you know, specifically that I remember that could have been called on Bosa that doesn't get called. So it's like, you know, I never want to blame penalties because they happen both ways. But, you know, there are certain things that you look back on that it's like, if only this was called a little different, and it could have been.
On either of those Super Bowls, did Michael Jordan come to your mind? Because you guys were going for 6-0.
Right.
Because when the Patriots played the Eagles, Brady was 5-2.
Yeah.
So I was thinking Jordan territory.
Yeah, I never really thought of it that way because, obviously it's a different sport, but it wasn't it wasn't one team, right? It was, they did it with the 49ers in the 80s and Joe Montana, and then they did it with Steve Young once.
Right.
And then it was, essentially, almost 20 years later?
Yeah.
With a whole different landscape of the league, a whole different team, coach, this, that, ownership even, right? Even ownership was different. So I never thought of it in that regard just because it wasn't, it's not like it was Joe Montana going for number 5 or number 6.
Number 6, yeah.
When Brady went for, number 5 and number 6, you started to think of that because it's one guy. Right? Whereas Jordan, it was it was Jordan going for 6 and
Phil Jackson.
Yeah, and Phil Jackson, but the organization, and it was, boom, 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 where, again, the 49ers were just, it was just a totally different era and time and team and all of that. So I never really made that comparison, but
you're going to
not like I did with Brady when he was going for 5, 6, and because obviously now he's got 7.
Right, because he lost to the Eagles, and then the next year they beat the Rams, and he got to 6.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Lombardi's 5-1 in championship games. Popovich is 5-1.
Yeah.
You guys are 5-2. That's 6 in sports because of Michael Jordan. It's something special.
Yeah.
To get to MJ.
Yeah.
And like I said, you guys are 5-2. Now moving forward with your 49ers, you got a young quarterback.
Yep.
Got a great offensive coach. I think a good GM. So what do you think moving forward? But a tough division.
Yeah, a tough division, but I really like what they put together over the past few years. I thought it came together quicker. Like I said, in 2019, I thought I'd be happy with a playoff team, and lo and behold, during the Super Bowl, 2020 they were killed with injuries. Like I've never seen the team suffer injuries like that before. And obviously they miss out in the playoffs by a couple of games in a tough division.
Very tough.
But I really like what they're putting together because they have blue chip players.
Yeah.
Right? They have a guy in Fred Warner who's one of the best linebackers in the league. They have a guy in Kittle who is arguably the best tight end in the league. You want to say Kelsey, that's fine, but to me, Kelsey's a receiver, Kittle's a tight end. Right. They're both tight ends, but they play different positions.
They do. Like Tony Gonzalez was more of a receiver.
But even Tony was, blocking. I don't remember too much of his career because I watched more of it later on. But
I think Kittle's more like Gronk, where he's more physical.
Yeah, he's an extra offensive lineman who's a great receiver on top of it, right?
Kittle's good.
But so they have Kittle, they have Warner, they have Nick Bosa coming back from injury this year, who's, I love the player because he's on my team and I know how good he is. But then you see guys around the league talk about him, and it just shows you how good he really is. Sometimes you're like, oh, yeah, he's good because he's on my team and I can see his talent. But the way the guys around the league talk about him, it's really like, it takes me a step back and I'm like, wow, like this dude's really that good, huh?
Yeah.
So Bosa, they have Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Raheem Mostert, they have a lot of pieces on offense. I think they're all young for the most part, and I think they're still putting that together. But Shanahan has proven that he's so good on offense that he's going to work with what he has. And, he has Nick Mullins, and Nick Mullins he's got the second most passing yards through 16 games in NFL history, and the guy can't even be a backup for the Eagles, who don't have a real quarterback.
Yeah, that's the one I heard that really got McVay, we'll say, frustrated with Goff, that Mullins beat you guys. Beat the Rams.
Yeah. He has Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard looking like they might be quarterbacks, and then they're not, obviously, but so what he can do on offense, I have full trust in.
Yeah.
And then the defense, they have so many players, like I said, they have a lot of the top-end talent, but then they have guys like, Jimmy Ward, Emmanuel Mosley, who's coming together. They have a couple young guys they drafted that I think could really be good. Dre Greenlaw, as I mentioned earlier, who's a really good second linebacker. And as far as the division goes, I have zero trust in Cliff Kingsbury coaching the Cardinals, right? He just doesn't seem like he gets it. So they don't really scare me. Kyler Murray is awesome, but the team as a whole doesn't really scare me. And the Seahawks, you know, obviously we've talked about them a little bit today, and they have Russell Wilson, who definitely scares me, but you know, we've said they haven't been the same team since they lost that Super Bowl. And Pete Carroll is a guy who I don't really trust anymore. He's so like, I want to run the ball. I want to run the ball. Dude, you have like one of the top 3 to 5 quarterbacks in the entire league. Like, make better use of that. They have a scary wide receiver in DK Metcalf, another awesome receiver in Lockett. But their defense it is, to say it's a shell of its old self is almost an understatement, right? Like they have some guys on there, but they're an average defense. The Rams are the one team that stick out to me because of Aaron Donald. That guy can wreck any game he plays in, and they have obviously a lot of other pieces there. Jalen Ramsey, another guy who can wreck any game that he's in. And Matt Stafford, I think he's awesome. I think he's a huge upgrade over Goff. I think they have receivers there, but I don't know. Shanahan's kind of always had McVay's number, and you know, I think those two are kind of the class of the division right now.
Do you know what other sport Aaron Donald played in high school and college? I didn't know that. He's a wrestler.
Oh, that doesn't even surprise me.
Doesn't that
doesn't surprise
make sense
me.
what
it
he's
does,
doing?
because he's such a tough dude. He uses his hands so
wrestling,
well. He moves so well. You know.
Do you remember
so that doesn't surprise me at all.
Do you remember where he
was
picked? Like, was he a top 10 pick, Aaron Donald? He was from Pittsburgh.
I don't think he was, to be honest. I think he dropped down because he's short. But sometimes it doesn't matter. You know, he's short. He's like 6 foot. You know, 6'1". He's short for his position, but he's certainly the best in the league. But he's one of the best that's ever done it, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, we think of guys over the last 20 years who are great defenders. You know, since LT played. And there's you know, like obviously guys like, you know, Ed Reed and you know, Ray Lewis and stuff like that. But as far as defensive linemen
he's
and just the best in general, there's J.J. Watt and there's Aaron Donald. And the conversation pretty much ends there for me. There's other guys who are really good, but when you know, even Ndamukong Suh was really good for so long, but
not that dominant. Like if Richard Seymour was good, but not as good as Aaron Donald.
No. J.J. Watt and Aaron Donald were just absolutely like top of the class. Some of the best, you know, we'll ever see. You know, not that we've ever seen, but we'll ever see, even future moving forward, right?
You know what's something about Shanahan's offense and McVay? People think it's a flashy offense with a lot of movement. They like to run power running football.
They're power teams,
Yeah, they are.
They are. Yeah, it's, you know, it's flashy because it works, right? You know, there are other offenses that are flashier. You know, I think like the Saints have an air raid offense where they're throwing down the field. Even the Buccaneers, they're throwing down the field, right? And you know, that's flashy, but the 49ers and the Rams who run a similar offense, even the Packers who run a similar offense, they're not these teams that are like, they'd rather run it first. You know, you have Aaron Rodgers, you're going to throw the ball, right? But they pound the football down your throat, not just with the run game, but even with the passing game. You know, they're taking these screen passes for 15 yards, so it's part of your passing game, but it's essentially a run. You know, you dump it off to the wide receiver, and then you got the other 3 wide receivers or 2 wide receivers blocking for you. They're tough physical teams. I'm looking forward to the next few years to really see the Rams and the 49ers matchups. And you know, to me, those are the 2 teams you look out for out of that division. You know, I've said you have to look out for the Seahawks because they have Russell Wilson, they have the quarterback, and that's half the battle. But as far as like full teams and depth goes, it's the 49ers and the Rams have the most of that in that division.
So what about your young quarterback, Trey Lance? What do you see?
I see a guy who is raw. You know, that's what they said coming out. He's raw, but he has maybe the most talent out of all of them. Right, out of this year's class. You know, Lawrence, Wilson, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones. But I see a guy who has so much talent. He has incredible arm strength. He's so fast. And I just think he has to get comfortable. That's what I think it is. I think once he gets comfortable, he's a really smart guy, and that's what Shanahan talked about, you know, coming out of the draft with him. Is he's a very cerebral guy. He learns, he processes, he takes in information, they were talking about halfway through the offseason, he already knew the playbook.
Yeah.
And, if you know anything about the Niners, a lot of people talk about how it's not an easy playbook to learn.
Yeah.
And so he's done a really good job adapting to that. I just think he has to get, he didn't play all year last year. He played in one game because the college season was canceled for COVID for his school. And the year that he did play prior to that, the guy threw like 2 picks and 20-something touchdowns. I mean, he was awesome. His interception so his decision-making seems like it's really high.
Yeah.
So when you have a high decision-making, along with that athletic ability, I think there are certain times he has to put more touch on the ball.
Yeah.
But I've seen it, so I know he can do it. Whereas Kaepernick, right? I never saw Kaepernick throw a touch pass in his time in the league.
Yeah.
Everything was a bullet, straight through. Boom, straight line, like.
Kaepernick was a comet when he came into the league.
Yeah, but the thing is, Trey Lance is just like that. But I think he has the ability to throw with touch. He has to learn a little bit of that in-game speed. What I've seen for myself is I think when he's half a second late on his decision making is when he's kind of fidgety, and then he ends up overthrowing it, not overthrowing it like over the head, but overpowering it.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm excited to see him, man. I honestly think they're going to bring him in packages, similar to the way that the Ravens used Lamar Jackson when they had Joe Flacco his first year.
Yep.
Before he became the full-time starter, he would come in on the field and run a play or two, a couple times, 5 or 6 or 7 plays a game. I think they're going to use a similar approach to that, maybe even a little bit more. If the third preseason game was any type of indication, the first 2 drives, the snaps were 14 for Garoppolo and 10 for Lance.
Yeah.
They were almost identical. I don't think it's going to be that close when the real games come in a couple days, but I do think they're going to use him because they want to give him reps, they want to give him experience, and I think they want him to take over the offense, but they're comfortable with Garoppolo for now.
Right. And Jimmy G's going to be fired up this year.
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, to me, I think I know what Jimmy is. He's a guy who's going to come in and he's going to play well, and he's probably going to throw some pick that doesn't really make sense 7 yards down the field to a guy who shouldn't get that pick. But he's going to play well otherwise. He's a good quarterback. He's probably slightly above average. It's a little hard to judge him because he's always getting hurt the past few years. But in 2019, he was awesome. I think he was even a little underrated at times that year.
Yeah.
But he's definitely going to be fired up.
One of your former coaches, Steve Mariucci, has been on NFL Network for years.
Yeah.
But you notice they always give him a hard time about two of his decisions. When he was with the 49ers, they had Brady in camp, and they didn't draft him.
Yeah.
And you know who else also Steve Mariucci was a quarterback coach, and he wasn't high on? Kurt Warner.
Yeah.
So that's why they give him a little business about that. It was like, oh, you couldn't spot talent with those two. Good coach, Mariucci.
Yeah.
But as far as you guys, looking forward, I like Trey Lance.
Me too.
For all the reasons you said. Athletic, intelligent, mature.
Yeah.
You want.
That's it. Mature is a good one.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if you look purely at the numbers through the preseason, it's a little misleading. I think that there were. I think his receivers dropped 9 passes.
Yep.
So his completion percentage was somewhere in the low 60s, but or something high 50s, whatever it was. But if out of those 9, if half of them are caught, his completion percentage looks awesome.
Yep.
But either way, he's got some work to do. But that's what they're there for, and that's why the kid just turned 21 in March.
Wow.
Oh
yeah, John Lynch rolled the dice on this one.
Yeah.
I kind of like it though.
Yeah. Definitely.
What's something about Joe Montana that I liked? He would throw the ball on third down, throw it out of bounds, and punt. Where like a Drew Bledsoe or the gunslinger Brett Favre, they try and stick it in there.
Yeah.
What I mean? I like that. That's a smart quarterback. Oh, there's nothing there. Throw it away and punt.
Yep.
So that was Joe Montana. So we're going to wrap that up with the 49ers.
Yeah, I think the Trey Lance is a good segue into talking about some young quarterbacks.
Yeah, young quarterback. And studying for this segment, I thought there were more good young quarterbacks. It seems there's more good young quarterbacks in the AFC. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, Justin Herbert, Baker, Trevor Lawrence, we'll say, and Burrow. So and that's the AFC. NFC, Kyler, Lance Fields. I got question marks with Sam Darnold, of course. And I got question marks with Daniel Jones. So as far as the young quarterbacks,
I don't like Daniel Jones at all.
No, he's question marks. But Mahomes is the best. Jones at all.
Without a doubt. You know, he's starting to get into that category where maybe he's not really. It depends on what you think of as a young quarterback, right?
High young.
What is he? Is he 25 or 26 now? Right. So he's starting to get to that point where he's not really a young quarterback anymore. But with that said, you look at quarterbacks different now because Tom Brady's 44. You know, even Roethlisberger's 37, 38. You know, Rodgers is 36, 37, 38, whatever he is. And so there are guys that are playing longer. Not all of them, obviously, but you know, Peyton was late 30s when he retired. So they're playing longer as long as they're good enough to do it. But so young quarterbacks, like nowadays you could be 27, 28. You could still be considered a young quarterback in some cases. Obviously, you have the years under your belt, so maybe it's not the same. But
now, what about Josh Allen?
He was an MVP candidate last year. You know, I think the kid was awesome, and I don't think it was a fluke. What you saw in the first couple of years was insane. Trey Lance reminds me of Josh Allen. Insane arm strength. He's got to learn how to process the defense in real time. And really good ability to move. And once he started to put the decisions together and process the defense and build the touch on his passes, he became an MVP candidate last year. He was outstanding, and Buffalo took that next step because of it. And I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon. You know, I had no idea who that coach was a few years ago when they hired him, but he's been awesome there since.
And also the offensive coordinator. Isn't it something? Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have great offensive coordinators.
Yeah, for what they want to do.
They're lucky they didn't get hired on elsewhere.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Lamar Jackson, I think this is a big year for Lamar, right? Because the year he won MVP, you know, he won it because of his legs, but he also threw the ball well. But they haven't given him a ton of talent at wide receiver. So Marquise Brown's coming into his second year now. Second, I think. And they drafted another guy who's supposed to be good, right?
Brought in Sammy Watkins.
They brought in Sammy Watkins, you know, so... And they lost three running backs to ACL injuries. Their top three running backs down with ACL injuries. So he's going to have to learn how to throw the ball better this year. And I think he has the talent. You know, I think some of the placements have to be better, but he's shown the ability to do it. It's just the consistency, I think.
Right, because he's got a strong arm. He's got a weird motion, but we've seen that before. He's got a strong arm.
Yeah, Phillip Rivers had one of the weirdest motions we've ever seen, and the guy's, in some people's minds, a Hall of Famer, right?
And this guy, Justin Herbert of the Chargers, basically broke almost every rookie record. So
he was awesome last year, and I think he's the real deal. You know, there's sometimes where someone comes out, they have a good year, and then they go away, but not usually at quarterback. There's not too many quarterbacks that have one good year, especially early on, and then they fall away. You know, you might think of RG3, Robert Griffin, but he got hurt, and that's why he fell away. You know, I don't think it was necessarily a talent thing.
No,
he was
it was
forced,
that injury. He
was forced to be a pocket passer before he was ready. You know, Russell Wilson and him were so similar. I think of them similarly because they came out the same year. They played in the playoffs that same year together. That's the game he got hurt in was against the Seahawks. And Russell was able to learn how to be a pocket passer on the job, whereas RG3 was kind of forced into that. So...
No, RG3 hurt that knee in that playoff game. Now, if he wouldn't have hurt, the knee was already hurt. It's just he tore the ligament.
And then he came back in.
And the thing is, if he goes into that season without surgery, that's a whole, because he was Rookie of the Year. So RG3 started out
over Andrew Luck, right?
Right,
same
Luck
year.
was 1.
And he was 2, and RG3 won Rookie of the Year. Who was the offensive coordinator that year?
Shanahan.
Shanahan, He made Alfred Morris look like an All-Pro.
Wow,
1,600 yards. But so
now how about Baker Mayfield? He's a good young quarterback.
Yeah, I think he had a good year. I think a lot of it was in the run game. I like Baker. He's one of those guys that has a little swagger on him.
He does. I like him.
And
he knows how to run an offense.
Yeah, so I'd like to see him continue to take that next step forward, right? Where he can kind of take over the game a little bit and not just rely on the running game. You know, obviously it's great to have that, fine to have that, and all of that. I'd love to see him take a next step and really be able to be the reason you win and not just manage the game like Alex Smith would do. Right? Alex Smith was very rarely the reason you won a game. He was just along for the ride managing,
not make a
right?
mistake. Yep,
Yeah.
And then Trevor Lawrence, we got to see Joe Burrow. Hopefully, comes back from that injury.
I thought he was good last year until he got hurt. So
yeah.
I hope he comes back. You know, they have Jamar Chase, who scares me because he talks about how it's. I don't think he said it's harder to catch, but essentially he said the ball is bigger and doesn't have the white stripes, so it's harder to see. I don't know if you saw that. He came out with that the other day. The NFL ball is harder to see because it doesn't have the white stripes on it. He's like, it's too brown, not as much white. And, so that scares me a little bit. But T. Higgins was awesome, Tyler Boyd, so he's got a good cast. Yeah,
and Daniel Jones, you're not high on it all. Neither am I.
Nah.
Sam Darnold, I'm rooting for the guy this year.
I think 27 or so fumbles in 2 years.
Yeah,
it's high 20s.
Yeah.
It's more than 25, I believe, in 2 years.
Yep. And Kyler Murray, I think, is real good. But
I think he's awesome.
I agree with what you say about the coach. And then we talk a little about Justin Fields with the Bears. Big-time college player.
Yeah, he looked pretty good throughout the preseason. You know, I think it's the same situation where they're going to go in with Andy Dalton as their starter and not force Fields to jump in right away because they have a solid team. So, you know, I think Garoppolo at this point is probably better than Dalton is, but, you know, just comparing the two situations, you know, Lance to Garoppolo and Fields to Dalton. But there's similar situations where the Bears aren't as deep and aren't as high-end talented as the Niners are, but I think they want to win. You know, they have Khalil Mack, they have Allen Robinson. The safety, I forget his name, Eddie something, I believe his name is, but he's an all-pro guy too. So they have good pieces there. So I'm interested to see what Fields can do. He's another guy with a big arm, a lot of really good legs, and we'll see if he can put it together. I was surprised when he fell as much as he did in the draft.
Me too.
But,
I kind of thought you guys should have went for him at 3.
Yeah.
And I thought the Jets should have went for him at number 2. I'm glad they did, because I didn't want him in my division. Now, Dak's a young quarterback. Dak Prescott. He's like 26.
Dak's elite.
He's good.
For him to come out with no preseason, no training camp, off of not just that massive ankle injury, but a shoulder injury, and for him to go neck and neck with Tom Brady in the first game of the season, throw for 400 yards, I didn't know how we would do. That guy's he's elite.
He is good.
He's someone in that Mahomes category where he's not really a young quarterback anymore, but he's still young enough.
Yeah.
He's elite. He's really, really good, man. He proved something to me watching that game.
Yep, I like Dak. The problem with that, the Dallas Cowboys, as we talked about in the last show, is no defense and the front office, which they don't really have one. It's Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
So I agree with that. Some of the just experienced quarterbacks: Brady, Rodgers, Wilson, Ryan, Stafford, Jimmy G. Jimmy G is, what's he like 29 now? So
28 maybe.
Yep. So he's
something
young,
like that. Yeah,
but
27,
he's
28.
had some injuries. I really think Jimmy G's going to be fired up these next couple of years.
Yeah.
To prove something.
I hope he's fired up this year. We can get his trade value up, win a Super Bowl, and trade him away. I'm going to root for whoever's playing for my team.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So whether it's him or Trey Lance, obviously Trey Lance has this crazy high ceiling, but whoever's starting, I want them to win, obviously. But yeah, as far as other young NFC quarterbacks,
I mean,
I feel like there's a lot of vets over there, right? One person that I am interested to see though this year is Jameis Winston.
Right.
He's not really young anymore. He's 27 or so, but he's not old by any stretch. And he never had a great shot in Tampa because although he had weapons, they never had a coaching staff or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see what he can do in New Orleans with a coach like Sean Payton, who obviously has been a great offensive coach for so many years. So that's one guy I'm looking forward to kind of watching this year.
He's got all the skills.
Yeah.
But, okay, we're going to wrap this up. We're shooting this at Smithfield High School. We were going to shoot with the field behind us, but they got a game over there, and we didn't want to get thrown off the field. So Tyler said, let's go shoot, which is a nice backdrop here. But really appreciate you coming on the show. This is the second show we've done together. Met this gentleman at church, and I'll see you Sunday at church.
Yes, sir.
But I'm Joe Mahan.
Tyeler Durand.
We're going to wrap it up. See you next time.